Welcome to the series of seminar videos, Germanische Heilkunde, by Dr. Med. Gerd Hummer. My name is Helmut Pilhar. I am the father of Olivia, and a lecturer, appointed by Dr. Hummer, about the Germanische Heilkunde theory. With this tutorial, Orgasm and Ranking, we will learn how the orgasm works, objectively and discreetly. Including, what prevents an orgasm, and why the libido can dry up, in women or men. Topics, such as homosexuality, frigidity, transsexuality, Oedipus, Electra, etc., are explained as well. Through territorial area conflicts, nature realizes the natural hierarchy, which is recognized across species. This chapter also explains the supersense of the different territorial area constellations, and how we can possibly solve them. There exists something like a patent solution. The objective is to better understand ourselves, our partner, homosexuality, etc., in and of themselves. For what purpose did nature set up the different territorial constellations? Learn more about orgasm and ranking in the approximately 1.5 hour seminar video. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you. I welcome you to our series of seminars on Germanische Heilkunde, by Dr. Gerd Hummer, MD. Our topic today, orgasm and rank order. Here we are dealing with the territorial area of the cerebral cortex. This is our youngest brain, our most complex brain. And Dr. Hummer also speaks of the higher mathematics, when it comes to the constellations. Dr. Hummer not only explains to us how our body works, but he also explains to us why we act, feel, and think the way we do. For example, for a man, all it takes is one territorial conflict, and he is gay. Then he says, but it comes from within me. He thinks that he thinks. In reality, many times we have thought through our conflicts. That also depends on his individual character. People say, he's just like that. But why is he like that? Manic depressive symptoms are present with psychoses in the constellations. There is no hereditary psychosis, and there is no incurable psychosis. If I resolve one of the two conflicts, then I'm out of the manic depressive cycle. To make it easier for the beginner, I recommend Mind Student Mädchen. But even for this, you should have understood at least the basics beforehand. In principle, Student Mädchen, the book with the song is Dr. Hummer's Legacy, the current book. In the AIDS book, the scale is explained very clearly and, of course, the various constellations in the territorial area, which are at least listed in the diagnostic charts. In this educational video, we will talk about the constellations in general. And will include detailed information of the postmortal, bioaggressive, mythomania, the flyer, the esoteric, etc. These are also explained in great detail in the seminar videos Psychoses Part 1 and 2. In this seminar video, we will talk more generally about what nature intended with psychoses. Please remember that the organs and psyche in the individual are inseparable. There is no organ disease without a correlate in the psyche. There is no pimple without a solved attack or defilement conflict, and there is no psychosis without organ relation. For example, the manic depressive person has his conflicts in the territorial area. Here we find the bronchi, the larynx, the coronary vessels. Here we also find the urinary tract, the liver bile ducts, the rectum, the hemorrhoids in healing. Of course, the organ level is always involved here. But what makes the territorial area constellations particularly interesting is that the conflict load stops. It stops cancer. In other words, the cell growth and cell loss stop. So we are apparently healthy but mentally conspicuous. The psychosis becomes obvious. And we are also developmentally stunted, but biologically we appear to be healthy. And we also have a third level, which is the brain level where the Hummer focus occurs. In the active phase, the Hummer focus is always disc or ring shaped, and in the healing phase, it is repaired by edema. This edema is subsequently squeezed out in the crisis and scars the brain relay. This is the same in all special programs. So, in conflict activity, the Hummer focus is disc or ring shaped, and it stores edema or water in the healing phase. Besides that, we can always determine from one level to the other. And a person's behavior allows for many conclusions about his brain CT. And, thus, his constellations. If someone is choleric, easy to anger, for example, then I know we are here in the territorial areas. The choleric has his Hummer focus in the stomach and the rectum relays, in the brain. Or if someone is a mythomaniac, for example, then he has his conflicts in the rectum relay and the bronchi relay. So just by observing his behavior, I can determine what is in his brain CT and, of course, which organ is involved. Being in a constellation means, a Hummer focus is active in the left territorial area and another one is active in the right territorial area. That also means a stop of maturation, making you look younger, with the typical baby face. Of course, I can also draw my conclusions from the organ level. From observing him, I can recognize a lot from his behavior and from his figure. We are also discussing the shoulder shape today. The earlier the left female territorial area is closed in a woman, the straighter her shoulders are. If she has no conflict in the territorial area, she has feminine round shoulders. If she has a conflict, she gets straight masculine ones, and similarly, so does a man. If the man has shoulders like a broomstick, then we know that the right masculine territorial area in his brain has been closed very early in childhood, so he is soft. Today, we are focusing on the orgasm and the hierarchy in the group. We have the male territory on the right hemisphere of the brain and the female territory on the left. This also has a lot to do with hormones. Hormones change, for example, with menopause. The woman comes into menopause at about 50 years of age. The left-handed woman comes into menopause a little later. She becomes male, and she really changes her brain then. She has male territorial behavior then. But the man doesn't come into his menopause until he is about 70 to 75. That's called andropause. In women, the estrogen of the ovaries decreases. In men, the testosterone of the testicles decreases, and that's why he will have a feminine perception. What exactly is the male, or masculine, perception? A man has his outer territory, he is hunting. A woman has her inner territory, her nest. She raises the children. Man is a hunter, a woman is a gatherer. The man gets on the offensive, the woman gets on the defensive. Just think of traffic. You can see that clearly there. The male drives fast with his Porsche, while the grandfather, with his VW Golf, drives very defensively. The woman drives defensively, but when she is manic, she can also speed up in her BMW Cabriolet. The manic woman is the masculine woman. Mania is what we find when the Hummer focus is active in the left temporal lobe or is in a constellation, in which the left temporal lobe is emphasized more strongly than the conflict in the right temporal lobe. Orgasms take place in the heart relays. Here we have the coronary arteries. In the active phase, the squamous epithelium ulcerates. You have angina pectoris, heart stabbing. In the crisis, this is the famous, infamous heart attack of the coronary arteries. But we rarely solve this conflict. Because most of these conflicts are active, a resolution is relatively rare. There are heart attacks after conflict resolution in the coronary arteries, but this is relatively rare. A man who has lost his territory is no longer alpha. The alpha has the territorial areas open. This is what distinguishes the alpha. And the pack needs an alpha and a lot of second wolves. And the second wolves are all conflict active with their territorial conflicts. If they have their territorial conflict, they are not alpha. And so they subordinate themselves. It is similar to a company. It needs a boss and many employees, and only then does it work. Consider the idea that we are supposedly all the same. The motto from the French Revolution was, freedom, equality, brotherhood. You can forget this. It is only a trick. Because what it meant in reality was always and without exception, if you don't want to be my brother, then I'll smash your head. This is nonsense, because nothing in nature works according to this principle. The natural hierarchy is also easily understood by everyone. It is inerratible. You can usually recognize an alpha male at first sight. He is usually a huge and strong man. He has straight shoulders and is not a dwarf. And there are also alpha women. They also have their territorial areas open, without conflicts. And this woman has feminine round shoulders. Alpha people are also emotionally balanced. These have reached their full emotional maturity. These are not stuck in their development, not even emotionally. These people are respected and loved, and their advice is sought. And this natural hierarchy is also understood at an interanimal level. So, for example, the dog in the pack. He knows precisely who the alpha is. This is the one he will have to watch out for. And he also knows this with humans. When the dog moves among people, he knows immediately with whom he has to kowtow. And the dog also recognizes if a human is manic depressive, so he'd better growl at this person to make him go away. The dog knows this instinctually, versus mentally. The manic depressive ones are unpredictable. High as the sky, low as the grave. Today yes, tomorrow, no. For another example, take a farmer at the horse market. He recognizes from the figure of the horse, from the conformation, whether the horse is good or not. And although two horses are healthy, he knows that one horse is no good, and the other one is good. This hierarchy in nature has two very big tasks. First, leadership. Because in order for the pack to exist successfully, it must coordinate to hunt effectively. For this, the pack needs a leader who gives the commands that the others follow. Only then can they be successful. You can see it is the same principle as in a company. The second important principle is reproduction. In nature, only the strongest are allowed to reproduce. It is the alpha who bites away any competitor. And the female always wants the best as the father for her children. Let's be honest for once. Which woman is satisfied with the second best? Every woman wants the best, as the father of her children. The second wolf, who is conflict active, has a low libido. He has no sex drive. That is what we are discussing today. In these territorial conflicts, we also have fixation. When the alpha bites down the second wolf, it comes as a shock. Highly acute, isolating, and catching him on the wrong foot. At the moment of the shock, the Hummer focus arises. This is striking proof that illnesses and psychoses have nothing to do with heredity, or infection, malnutrition, or the wrong sleeping place, and so on. The cause is always a single shock. We can even photograph it, we don't need to believe in anything. At this moment of shock, through the open eyes, mouth, ears, the brain goes snap. And at this moment, the tracks are programmed in. So when I have a conflict with the alpha is programmed in as a track. Now, I have a sort of allergic reaction to the alpha. With recurrence, or in territorial matters, I have a fixation. I am fixated on the alpha. But what if it's the mother programmed in? For example, because mother leaves the family unexpectedly. For a boy, his mother is part of his territory, or his entire territory in general. If she's suddenly gone, his territory is gone. The boy is gay, but fixated on his mother. That's what's called Oedipal. It can be the older brother. Let's say he puts the younger brother in a headlock, until he gives up. Then the younger brother is fixated on the older one. From then on, whatever the older brother says is like the amen in a prayer. And that's how the pack works. When the alpha says, "Let's get that dough," the second wolf says, "Sir, yes sir." With the second wolf, libido is in the cellar. Which is why the female always has only the best available for her children. Today, every little male has his little female. But no farmer would do that with his animals. If he wants to have calves, he gets a strong bull. He wants healthy calves. We in Germanische Heilkunde think very biologically. Put another way, our model is nature. We try to understand nature because nature has laws. A law of nature is an expression of the will of creation. By contrast, in our society, we have various monotheistic religions and ideologies that oppress everything feminine. These religions and ideologies are substitutes for fundamental freedoms that come from knowledge, truth, and spirituality. Because they consider God to be male. Personally, I would rather have 3 goddesses than one old man with beard. The point I'm making here is that it would be beneficial if we could again form a society that reflects our nature. In other words, a society created according to our biological code. The way we tick, the way our species is. Because we are not really city people. We feel comfortable in the family, in the clan, where everyone knows everyone. In a village, where everyone can leave the doors open, where everything is clear. These big cities have added an element of alienation, which does not correspond to our biological programming at all. Also, capitalism does not correspond to our natural biological programming either. So, let's get straight to orgasm and then pregnancy. These also proceed according to this two-phase principle, just like all the other special biological programs. As long as there is a resolution, there will be a vagatonic healing phase and a crisis. However, pregnancy is not a special biological program which is supposed to help one to resolve a conflict. What we used to call a disease was always the active phase or the healing phase of a special biological program that helped us solve the cause. For example, a mother has an accident with her child. This is the care conflict and the cause of her breast cancer. Breast cancer in the active phase gets bigger and bigger, more breast milk. Every program's biological purpose is to solve the cause, to get the child healthy again. If the child is healthy, I don't need this lump in my breast. I don't need more breast milk. So in the healing phase, the lump is broken down by tuberculosis mycobacteria, and at the end of the healing, the lump is gone. This is precisely how colon cancer works, too. Because everything has its biological sense. Pregnancy also proceeds according to this two-phase principle, as does orgasm. I will come to orgasm in a moment. But neither of these is a sensible biological special program that helps me to solve a conflict. With the fertilization of the egg, the woman is pregnant. The first 3 months go sympathicatonically, that's when she has cold hands and nausea. If a conflict occurs in the fetus during these first 3 months, a miscarriage will likely occur. Nature says, instead of raising a disabled child, we'd better make room for a new pregnancy. The last 6 months pass with extreme vagatonia. Now she has warm hands. In fact, this vagatonia is so strong that every possible active program stops, including cancers. In this respect, if she's in a territorial constellation, the vagatonia will solve her constellation. If she is manic depressive, that is, developmentally delayed, this constellation will be cancelled. And she will catch up the emotional maturity she formerly lacked. Every pregnancy gives her the equivalent of 3 years of additional emotional maturation, provided the pregnancy occurs prior to age 25. Talk with a 25-year-old woman who has a child, and a 25-year-old woman who has no child. In the first case, you will talk to a woman. In the second case, you will talk to an intellectual. That is the difference. As I said, the Germanische Heilkunde is very biologically oriented and supportive of life. This is why euthanasia, abortion, and even birth control pills upset the biological rhythm of life. A person who implements the biological principles of the Germanische Heilkunde in his daily life will live in harmony with his biological human code. This is why, if they choose to have a large family, they may. Birth is the crisis, and then vagatonic lactation begins. This would last 2 to 3 years for us humans. If a mother is fully breastfeeding in regular 4-hour intervals throughout the day and night, then she has no ovulation. This is natural contraception. Nature says, you don't have room for a new baby at all, you can't get pregnant. So a pregnant or fully breastfeeding mother who has no ovulation is a masculine woman. She has switched brains. She growls, her libido is in the cellar. She growls when the man wants something from her. But then, when she is weaning her child, nature says, aha! You have room to get pregnant again. So, get pregnant. In nature, after all, there are 2 strong drives: self-preservation and reproduction. These are always carried out as best as they can be. So, after weaning, the woman changes back and becomes hormonally female again. With the next ovulation, her estrogen increases, and so does her libido. And she doesn't take a break, because she is ready to be mated again. With the next ovulation she mates again, and this changes her brain again. In nature, there would be no period bleeding either. And if in nature any female did not mate, a disaster must have happened. Now let's zoom in on the formation of the baby. That also has prehistory, and that is the orgasm. Orgasms also proceed according to this principle of biphysicality, again all without conflict. Here we would not call the DHS, Dirk-Hummer syndrome, but lasting sympathetic. She finds the partner with whom she wants to get into bed. Now one is not conflicted, but very stressed. You have less appetite, you lose weight. So if you want to lose weight, you have to fall in love. Just for comparison once. I have a female Rottweiler and a male Shepherd. And neither are spayed or neutered. The last time Emma was in heat, Wolfie, the male, was within 4 inches of Emma. He spat out a liver sausage that had been lying on his tongue. He was so much under stress. Whenever Emma is in heat, Wolfie loses 5 to 7 pounds. Then I always have to watch out that I get away with Emma. When she is in heat, I really feel sorry for the male dog. But I don't want to castrate him either. As a human being, you then run to the hairdresser, and then you take a second shower. Because the goal is to get the partner into bed. Getting into bed is the conflict resolution. Now the vagatonic cuddling phase begins. And this phase culminates in orgasm. Orgasm is the crisis. In the process, you gasp and sweat. It is also claimed that there are men who fall back into deep vagatonia immediately after orgasm, and fall asleep shortly after. This is what I was told. And man is also not a being who likes to make it very difficult for himself. We have to consider that this act is also quite strenuous. But nature has sweetened it for us, so that we continue to enjoy doing it. To preserve the species. And I think that's really nice of nature. That's how animals do it. And that's how humans do it, too. And yet, we are all related to each other. We are not only related to the monkey, we are related to all creatures, also to the plants. And then when spring comes, the wedding, the high time is. All of nature is busy multiplying, isn't that wonderful? And now we go back to the heart relays. The right heart relay controls the coronary arteries, and the left one controls the coronary veins. The arteries take the blood to the heart muscle, and the veins take the used blood back to the lungs. The left relay also controls the cervix in women, which is squamous epithelium tissue. Where the pap is taken. In the male, that would be the seminal vesicle. The squamous epithelium ulcerates in the active phase, and in healing, it is repaired under the swelling. Then the pap is altered. In the crisis, you have the pulmonary embolism here. By the way, this is the same in man and woman. If the woman gets into a crisis, she has a pulmonary embolism. By the way, how the brain relay is assigned to the organ relay is permanently wired and never changes. So the question is, how does the Hummer focus get in there? Is the person left-handed or right-handed? The handedness is decisive here. The hormone situation is also decisive here. The handedness can never change. But the hormonal situation can change through menopause, through pregnancy, and through birth control pills. Through chemo, the man becomes female, the woman male. And so, many old conflicts can be resolved. Which, under certain circumstances, can end catastrophically. If one has a conflict load over 9 months, they will die of the pulmonary embolism or of a heart attack. There are already many heart attacks, but many more people have these as active conflicts comparatively. We usually suffer these in childhood, at a very young age. And we usually don't resolve these conflicts throughout our lives. We are a little bit changed in essence. We are just a little bit gay. My goodness, there are so many masculine women. The alpha is not really in demand at all. The women today are all rather into the softies. Because all women wear pants today, they are all masculinized. Show me today once a woman in dresses, a real feminine woman. Today, you see almost more men in women's clothes than women. Yes, bad. So if you look at our society with the eyes of Germanische Heilkunde, you only can cry. So, and the left heart relay of the coronary veins controls the vaginal and anal orgasm. The right cardiac relay of the coronary arteries controls the clitoral and penile orgasm. So, this is how I remember it. The former man was once female. Still today, you can see remnants of that in man. He has nipples. Have you ever thought about why man needs nipples? To play with? Or what? And that is just such a remnant from the history of development. And the penis, embryonal technically, we see this very clearly. The penis, so Hummer says, is nothing else than a clitoris that has shot into the weeds. So a clitoris that has not stopped growing. An oversized clitoris. That is the penis. Therefore, the penile and clitoral orgasms belong together, and vaginal and anal orgasms also belong together. Let's start with the right-handed woman. In the territorial area, we start as follows. The woman or girl is female. By the way, sexual maturity starts at 11. Menarche starts at 11, the first ovulation starts at 11, the first menstruation. But the girl was female before and remains female after. The hormonal change comes at the age of 50. In both the right-handed and left-handed female, their perception, no matter her age, is always female. The next thing we have to remember is, this map of the territorial area is accurate for the right-handed. For the left-handed, the so-called night hop happens. So, for example, if the right-handed person suffers a scare-fright conflict. Oops, the thief. Then she has the scare-fright in her larynx. If she is left-handed, then she has what is called the night hop. Night's hop means, the Hummer focus strikes precisely on the opposite side, and it strikes in the male territorial area. However, it is still perceived as a female conflict. Therefore, the left-handed woman reacts with the bronchi. Likewise, without conflict or hormonal shift, the right-handed woman reacts with a vaginal orgasm. The left-handed woman reacts with a clitoral orgasm, due to the night hop. So, right-handed without conflicts, she reacts vaginally. If she has a sexual conflict, it typically happens with the girl around the age of 5 to 8. It can be anything. The dad walks through the living room with an erection, or the girl catches the parents making love. Or the porn magazine, or she sees an exhibitionist. Or she has a harsh examination at the doctor. It is the confrontation of a non-mature with the issue of sexuality. For the mature girl it may be 15, that same incident is no longer a conflict. But for the 5-year-old or the 8-year-old child, it is. When she looks through a porn magazine for the first time, or is confronted with the topic of sex for the first time, these are highly acute, isolative, and surprisingly caught on the wrong foot. That is then the first sexual conflict in the coronary vein relay. So, the next thing to remember is that one territorial conflict in the left, female territory area, it takes away her feminine feeling. She now has no female sensation, no female thinking, no female acting. The right male territorial area side is free, and she now feels everything there. She now feels boyish. She is changed in nature. She now plays soccer or wants to become a car mechanic. Or she climbs trees like a boy, and she doesn't get her period at 11. A girl without conflicts gets her period at 11. If she gets her period after 11 or before 11, then something must have happened. It was like that in ancient times, it was like that in the Middle Ages, and it is like that today. When she has no conflicts. For both the right-handed and the left-handed, the normal is 11. And now she's going to be 11, and 12, and 13, and 14, and still have no menstrual period. This means the right-handed woman now cannot respond with a vaginal orgasm. The vaginal sensation is taken away from her. But clitoral sensation is working. Vaginally, it's gone until she suffers a second conflict. The second conflict is typically at 12, 13, or 14. The first unhappy love. The male girl has a preference for softies. And now, she adores the softie in the next classroom, who has long hair and 2 rings in his ear. And she adores him secretly, silently. And, one day she sees him, maybe at the age of 14. Her softie boy, hand in hand kissing another girl. And now the softie has left her territory. So, the masculine girl prefers feminine boys. Yet she feels like the man whose wife has run away, with a masculine loss of territorial conflict. And this second conflict at 14 brings her period. Let her now be 25 years old. Clitorally, she can have an orgasm at any time, although she is conflict active. But vaginally, nothing works. She had, in the example, suffered her first conflict at 5. And therefore she had never reacted vaginally in her life. And now something very interesting occurs. When this right-handed woman, who got her period at 14 reaches the age of 50, she becomes a man. So, the estrogen of the ovaries decreases, and she is now thinks and acts like a male. And she has a male perspective. She is now like a right-handed man. Important, the handedness can never change. In the right-handed person, the right side is and remains the partner, and the left side is the mother-child side. This can never change. But the woman becomes hormonally male, and the man then becomes hormonally female, like the grandpa. By the way, you have surely observed this yourself in young, married couples. The male man walks in front and protects his wife. The female woman lets herself be protected and walks behind, and that harmonizes. And then she turns 50. At 50, the woman changes her brain, she now also has male territorial behavior. Now there are two deer in the same territory at home. Now, they want to get through the door at the same time, so to speak. Now, she needs her own room. Where she can put her sewing machine, where she can lock it up. And now there is trouble every day. She and her husband are two men now, that doesn't work out well. And that lasts for 25 years, because at 75 the man then makes his change and he becomes female. He has no territorial behavior now. And the grandma is still male, then she walks in front, and the grandpa gropes after her. And then they harmonize again, so half and half. You cannot compare a female woman with a male woman. And you cannot compare the male man with the female man, with the grandfather. They are changed in essence by the hormonal situation, without any conflicts. And now the grandma is walking in front, and the grandpa is walking behind. And he does whatever the grandma says. You can observe that very clearly. As I said, you don't have to believe anything in Germanische Heilkunde, you just have to have recognized it once. And she now becomes a right-handed man by the change, and the following happens now. For the right-handed man, the first conflict is a male conflict. And for the right-handed man, the brain map is correct. For the right-handed man, the first conflict is always on the right. And that is why the right-handed woman changes the numbering of the conflicts. That means the first conflict switches and becomes the most recent conflict. And the most recent conflict becomes the original one. Another peculiarity that exists only in the territorial area. You can always solve only the last conflict first. Or said differently, the first conflict remains cemented in place, as long as the second one is on top of it. And that is also for our protection. If this protection did not exist, very many would die of heart attacks. But as I said, it's not very easy to die of a heart attack. So, now the order of the conflicts has changed. In the case of the right-handed person, the left hummer focus is now the second conflict, and she may be able to resolve it. This depends again on the content of the conflict. Suppose it was an event with an exhibitionist, which caused her sexual conflict when she was 5, if it was her first sexual conflict. Now she is 50. The exhibitionist from when she was a child leaves her unimpressed. Therefore, she can solve it now. For this 50-year-old today, it depends on whether the exhibitionist from childhood is still perceptible, from a conflict perspective. A joke. Grandma comes out of the grocery store, and an exhibitionist opens his coat in front of her. Says the grandma, "Oh, now I know what I forgot, the shrimp." So for the granny, it's not a conflict. She resolves the childhood conflict which has become her second conflict. She is no longer perceiving the exhibitionist from childhood. The conflict is resolved, she possibly survives the pulmonary embolism because the conflict load decreases to 0. The longer the constellation exists in the territorial area, the more the conflict load gets closer to 0. This is also a particular feature of the territorial areas, which we do not find anywhere else. Typically, the longer a conflict is active, the heavier the conflict load and the more dangerous the healing phase is. But in the territorial area, the conflict load stops when the constellation begins. And the longer the constellation exists, the less the conflict load. The constellation in this example has existed since she was 14 years old, for almost 35 years. Only the first conflict could have a conflict load, and this conflict load from the first conflict, from the left female side, reduces to 0. And now she resolves the conflict at age 50. The conflict load is now less than 9 months, and she gets the pulmonary embolism. One morning, she has shortness of breath and heart palpitations. She feels terrible for a day or maybe 2 or 3 days, but that's it. And now the heart relay is open, so she can now feel the vaginal orgasm for the first time. You hear that so often. The woman who has gone through menopause can suddenly feel her vaginal orgasm, something that she had never felt before. And then the woman thinks to herself, "Fantastic, this man can do what no one has ever done before." In reality, she has simply resolved a conflict. It has nothing at all to do with the man. So, let's talk now about the left-hander without conflicts and without a hormone shift. She has the night hop. The left-hander reacts with a clitoral orgasm. If she has a conflict, the male right side closes. The female left side remains free, and the left-handed woman remains female. And another peculiarity, which also affects only the left-handed, they go into primary psychosis. So you can be psychotic with only one conflict, and that is always the left-handed female, not the right-handed female. No matter where the conflict hits, the left-handed woman is depressed with the first female conflict. And she becomes super feminine, and she may now get her period at 9, she's super feminine. And she can still have vaginal sensation, so she can have both, clitoral and vaginal orgasms. However, if she has a second sexual conflict, this would then strike on the opposite side. And from now on, the vaginal sensation is also gone for her. The vaginal orgasm is no longer possible. So, if the woman tells you that having a vaginal orgasm is not possible, then you know that in her brain CT, the left relay is occupied. Whether she is left-handed or right-handed, no matter. If she is pre- or postmenopausal, no matter. If she is on a birth control pill or not. If she can't do it vaginally, you basically know what is in her brain CT. Her left conflict is active. That's a sexual conflict. And that is also, as I said, a diagnostic tool. Can she vaginally feel an orgasm or not? By asking questions such as this, the Germanische Heilkunde therapist must be a specialist, because they must respond to many different needs of the client. Example. The patient has experiences, he is kicked out of bed by his wife. And he suffers a self-devaluation conflict, with bone, with prostate, with an ugly semigenital conflict. The skin also reacts with separation. And it all culminates from one conflict shock event. So the therapist in Germanische Heilkunde has to know about the bones. He has to know about the prostate. He has to know about the skin. He has to know about everything. Specialized doctors are all that exist now, generalists are almost non-existent. And he must also be able to put himself in the shoes of a child. He has to be able to put himself in the shoes of a wife who has been cheated on, or he has to be able to put himself in the shoes of a businessman who has gone bankrupt. He needs empathy, and he needs charisma. There's a vast difference between, if I ask you, "Madam, can you feel an orgasm vaginally?" I get a resounding slap in the face from you, "Helmet, you sexist." Whereas if Dr. Hummer asked you, you would melt away. And you would have said, "Oh, doctor." And if the patient doesn't tell you everything, then the therapist is lost. And then he has to change gears and retrain. The alpha state cannot be learned. You are alpha if you have not had any conflicts in your territories before the age of 25 years, which means you have reached your full maturity. And Dr. Hummer was also a priest. Lutheran, non-ordained. With a master's degree in theology. He said that the therapist must also be able to go into the confessional, with the patient. The patient then opens up to the therapist only when he realizes, first, that the doctor knows what he's talking about. And second, that he really is honest with the client. Then the patient tells the therapist everything. And if he can't do that, then the therapist is lost, he is out of place. And then he should retrain. So, it's a little more complicated with the left-handed female, when she comes into menopause. Her first conflict was the right conflict with her, and now she becomes the left-handed man. However, the left-handed man has the night hop to the opposite temporal lobe, with the first conflict. And the second conflict will be on the right. And now she is the left-handed man. This was the exhibitionist conflict which she resolved. She has a clitoral orgasm even with a conflict, but vaginally, she remains blocked. Frigidity is something entirely different. Frigidity is basically rheumatism of the clitoris. The male counterpart of the clitoris is the glans. Not the foreskin, but the glans. And that is periosteum. Every bone is covered with periosteum. So, for example, the whale has a bone as his penis. And every bone is covered with periosteum, and that's the brutal separation conflict. And that hurts in the conflict active phase, which is where the term rheumatism comes from, which is not to be confused with rheumatoid arthritis. Joint rheumatism is the bone or cartilage program, which is self-devaluation conflict. Each joint has its self-value, but the periosteum is different, it's a brutal separation conflict. If someone experiences a brutal separation, involving the feet, such as getting lost, These people go to bed with 2 pairs of socks, yet their feet never get warm. And that hurts as if your feet are stuck in a block of ice. That's rheumatism, that's periosteum. And the clitoris and the glands are periosteum, and the conflict is the brutal separation, at the clitoris or just at the glands. In other words, the periosteum is the membrane which covers the bones and also the clitoris and glands. They have the same tissues, the same conflicts, the same programs and the same pain. And if the woman has suffered a brutal separation at the clitoris, highly acute, isolative, and unpredictably caught on the wrong foot, then she is in pain. And this woman does not have much desire for sex. That hurts. And Hummer had a brain CT of a 40-year-old woman in front of him. And he sees she has a conflict active in the relay of the clitoris, which by the way is near the heart relay, so arteries and veins. And Hummer sees she has this clitoral conflict active. And he asks her if she can do without sex for months. She says, "For months? I haven't had sex at all for 6 years, and I have no problem with that." This woman is frigid. When she was 15 years old, she had problems standing in front of the class at the blackboard, so she had very intense stage fright. She went to a doctor who pretended to be able to take away her fear. He had the girl lying naked on the table, run his fingers into her vagina and massage her G-spot. Dr. Hummer thinks that this must have been the trigger for her frigidity. She says that she has not talked about this incident with anyone. She has kept it to herself, but this experience has kept her busy all these years. Incidentally, it is also very typical when one encounters an active conflict in a patient, regardless of whether it is a man or a woman, they say, "I haven't talked about this with anyone yet." That is typical for the active phase. Researchers at the Charité, University Medicine Berlin, discover the scars of the soul. Sexual abuse changes the brains of young children. Abusing little girls not only scars the soul. It literally scars the brain, with consequences for the emotional realm and for future sexuality. Women sexually abused as children are more likely to experience pain during sex. Their libido does not develop as in other women, and they feel less pleasure. Scientists can only speculate about why the brain structure changes. I would suggest they should ask Hummer. That is also so typical, this anti-system in which we are living, this hypocrisy. We look for every straw that promises to decipher the riddle of cancer. Here they have this straw, but this straw they are beating out of hand. Why? Because they then earn nothing more. The answer is as simple as that. Modern medicine is not about what would be ideal, or what would be desirable, or what would work. It is only about what is financially ideal. It is about financial greed. That is, unfortunately, the crux of the matter, even if it costs the lives of millions of people. Brutal. We also have sphincters, which are ring muscles. For example, the rectum, bladder, and cervix sphincter. These ring muscles are innervated the wrong way. When there's a lion behind me, I run as fast as I can. The transverse striated muscles are now innervated. I'm on the run, but the sphincter opens up and I shit myself with fear. I have a spontaneous bowel movement because the sphincter opens under stress. And when I sleep? In relaxation, in sleep, when someone lifts my arm, it falls. But the sphincter remains closed in relaxation. Otherwise, it would go down the drain, every night again. When a person with epilepsy spasms, the musculature spasms are the crisis. And the sphincter opens, and the person urinates. And this is also the reason for bedwetting. Also, in the last 6 months of pregnancy, the sphincter of the uterus is closing and holding the baby. At birth, the sphincter opens. And the smooth uterine muscles increase their peristalsis and push the baby out. This is the birth. A pregnant mother-to-be is hormonally male. With her, the libido would be in the cellar. Our sexuality is then also somewhat out of control. By the way, I don't know any species that abuses its children. Except the alleged coronation of the creation. This all comes from the monotheistic religions. I don't like them. Now, if a pregnant woman has an orgasm in the last 6 months of pregnancy, it can be disastrous for the child. Because during orgasm, the cervix opens. This is why doctors advise that if the birth is overdue, orgasm should help the child finally come. An orgasm is a crisis. The sphincters open, which facilitates mating. As we know, when it comes to orgasm, everyone has a practice, but unfortunately the theory is missing. So that's what we're doing now. Is everything still clear so far? Are you still following me? We are now making an orgasm. So, I know from experience that I now have your full attention. Now, a man naturally reacts penile during orgasm. If he has a territorial conflict, then he's not impotent. Impotence is basically frigidity, so to speak. When a man has a territorial conflict, his libido is in the basement. He doesn't have the need. That's when women complain, "My husband doesn't want to anymore." That's what we're talking about now. Impotence is like a brutal separation. Not at the foreskin, but at the glands of the penis. A foreskin conflict would trigger a normal, outer skin program called phimosis. The foreskin program, phimosis, begins with a conflict of separation associated at the penis. For example, from a lover that was forbidden to a husband. He's not allowed to have his lover, and his foreskin can narrow in on him. That is, the foreskin can constrict. But this is not the brutal separation, this would be the impotence. Also, in young boys, the foreskin is not yet detached from the glands. If they manipulate it, they can injure themselves, and it will scar. That's why you have to intervene surgically under certain circumstances. But in an adult man, foreskin constriction is a separation conflict. A 30-year-old tells us he had phimosis when he was 5 years old. His mother was tearing at the foreskin, while he screamed, "Mom, stop, stop." Today, he can penetrate a woman with no problem when he's on top of her. But when she wants to take the initiative with him, that's when he gets on the mom track, and that's when he falls over. That's impotence. Now, a left-handed man has the Knight's hop of the conflict over to the left side of the cerebral cortex. But, even though the penile orgasm response comes from the right side of the brain, the left-handed man must also respond penilely. Therefore, Hummer concluded that to ejaculate, a left-handed man must first have to get his left relay into a crisis first, and the crisis is like an active Hummer focus in quality. That means that for the duration of the orgasm, which is the crisis, his left female side closes. This allowing him to get his second, right side relay into the crisis. His second conflict must strike on the right. Therefore, he can only now get the right relay into the crisis. So, Hummer thought that left-handed men have both relays in crisis simultaneously, during orgasm. A left-handed man should therefore feel an orgasm more intensely than right-handed men would. But this is unfortunately difficult to measure. I once had a humorist at a seminar, who was biologically right-handed. When he heard about left-handers have more intense orgasms, he started clapping his hands on the left. But that wouldn't help him, of course. Either you're left-handed, or you're not. When the left-handed man suffers a loss of territory, when he is beaten down by the alpha, he now has a territorial conflict. Left-handed men get into primary psychosis, immediately becoming manic. That's what we call macho, by the way. The macho pretends to be the boss. He shows up in a Porsche cabriolet and fancy sunglasses, but it's all bought on credit. And he is exaggeratedly masculine. With this man, his libido is not in the cellar, because he has his right relay free. The right-handed man has the first conflict on the right. And with that, his libido is gone. With the left-handed man, it is not. And watch out, the alpha is not a macho man. The alpha is a balanced man. A macho is the manic one. Of course, there are also right-handed machos. They are constellated and manic. But the left-handed one becomes manic with the first conflict. For a man, a single territorial conflict is enough for him to become gay. Of course, homosexuality has something to do with conflicts, because one thing is clear. Homosexuality cannot be inherited. Simply because they cannot reproduce in a homosexual relationship. Yes, they try again and again, but it just does not work. This is nothing at all against gays. On the contrary, I think quite pragmatically. It's one competitor less. So for all I care, they could all be gay. I don't have a problem with it. There are more women available for me. Let's start with a right-handed gay man. With a right-handed man, his male, right side closes with the first conflict. while the female side of his brain remains free. By the way, nature doesn't concern itself with whether he lives out his homosexuality or not. Nature is only concerned that he is not responsible for reproduction. That's what it's all about. This outcome can also be differently formulated. For example, if a softie goes to bed with a pill-taking masculine woman, there are effectively two gays in the bed. It comes back to the same thing. The crucial thing is, he does not reproduce. That's what nature cares about. But this coming out business? Look how gay I am. That's just to destroy the family. Because it forces the majority, straight people, to have to follow the minority, homosexual people. Otherwise, you're immediately accused of discriminating. Certain people arrange it the way they need it. I'm talking about those who seek to rule us. They want our society to lose its culture and end in Sodom and Gomorrah. They would like that. Okay, back to the right-handed gay man. The penile orgasm relay is blocked, but the anal is free. He is feminine and has a female role in a sexual relationship. Meanwhile, with the left-handed gay man, one territorial conflict is enough, and he can be gay, too. But he is anal orgasm blocked and penile orgasm free. The left-handed man is manic, is masculine, and has a male role in a sexual relationship. And now the constellated gay man. Whether he is right-handed or left-handed. If he is depressed, he is feminine. Then his penile orgasm relay is more blocked than his anal orgasm relay. And he, therefore, has the female role in his relationship. The manic gay man, conversely, that's the masculine gay. He's more blocked anally than penilely. And he, therefore, has the male role in his relationship. In our village, there's a gay couple. I don't know if they're married or not. The manic one, you always see him walking his dog. He's at every party. But his partner? He's depressed, you don't see him, and you don't hear him. By the way, that's a characteristic of all manic people. They annoy and torment you all day long. And the depressives? You don't see them, and you don't hear them. That's their characteristic. Gays sometimes think that only they can really experience the anal and penile orgasms at the same time. That overkick. That love ecstasy. But women can also experience that, if they have no conflicts in the territory. It's the alpha woman that can react anally, vaginally, and clitorally at the same time. This is not reserved only for gays. Now, the bisexual man. If he is depressed, if he is feminine and the penile orgasm relay is more blocked than the anal, then he is into a masculine counterpart. That's when he gets into bed with a man. If he's manic, he just gets on the track, which emphasizes the conflict. The Hummer focus remains target ring-shaped. The tracks determine how the conflicts are weighted. If his tracks emphasize the conflict on the left, then he becomes manic, through the track. Now he is more anally blocked than penilely blocked. He's masculine. If he meets a female counterpart, then he gets into bed with a woman. This is the bisexual man. Once one way and once another. And now, transsexuality in men. Again, the first conflict in a right-handed man closes his right male side. And his left female side remains free. He is soft. Now, some conflicts have very minimal intensity. And, of course, there are very intense conflicts. The stronger the conflict on the right side of the brain is, the more strongly the male feeling is taken away from him. Therefore, it can now be that the boy thinks that he is actually a girl. Simply because the conflict is very intense. For example, at a lecture, a mother told us she had two sons. One was 10, the other was 7. The 7-year-old was convinced he was a girl. He had a girl's hairdo, girl's clothes. The 10-year-old was deathly unhappy that his younger brother was a fag. At school, of course, this is the feeling about a boy is actually a girl. He's just in the wrong body, so to speak. Nature has made a mistake. The teachers went along with the boy who wanted to be a girl, and it was clear that the parents were resigned to it. He was determined that, at puberty, he would be operated on to become a girl. But then the mother introduced the song, Mein Student Mädchen. This melody can transform the intensity of these cortical brain conflicts downward. The boy said, "If that's going to change me, I don't want to hear it." Yet, for 3 months, Neither boy got to go to sleep without mein student Mädchen. One morning, the boy came out of the children's room as a boy. He didn't want to be a girl anymore. He then had a boy's clothes, he had a boy's hairdo. And at school? What did you do with the child? Did you put pressure on him? No. That's what mein student Mädchen does. And that's transsexuality. I know another case in point. At my lectures, I'm always there an hour early. One time, there was already an older lady waiting, aged about 60, with a pageboy hairstyle. She had a somewhat angular face. During the break, she spoke to me and I thought to myself, phew. She has a really deep voice. At the end of the lecture, she came up to me and asked me, what am I, actually? When a woman suffers a scare-fright conflict, if the speech center is affected, the Broca center, then she often has a smoky voice. I said, well, you have a little bit of a male voice. She said, no. She said that she actually was a man. That he had 2 sons, and he was from a pastor's family. But he'd had an operation 7 years previously. He explained it to me in detail. The clitoris was made from the glands. The scrotum was removed. The testicles were thrown away, they were no longer needed. And the vulva and vagina were constructed from the scrotum, which is hairy. So his vagina was hairy on the inside. I don't know, maybe he was trying to make it palatable for me? He took estrogens, that's why he had breasts. He had to shave his chest more than his face. And he wore a wig, because otherwise he was bald. You know, I feel sorry for people like that. He had a huge identity problem with himself. The interesting thing, and he told it like this, he only got into bed with women. So what exactly was he now? Was he a lesbian or what? Did you know, according to gender theories, there are over 60 different genders? 60. Crazy. In the German parliament, a member of the Green Party once greeted everyone by 60 different genders. They all said, please, stop it. But he didn't want to offend or exclude anyone of any possible sexual orientation. One can get extreme with it. So, Viagra. That was initially an angina pectoris drug. A patient who has a conflict here also has a heart attack in the healing phase as the crisis. After a double-blind trial, it was found that patients using this drug, the substance was called differently at that time, frequently died of heart attacks. And, of course, that did not look so good. The pharmaceutical industry gives out a drug for angina pectoris, and the patients die of heart attacks afterward. So they wanted to collect this drug and take it off the market. That's when they discovered that the patients didn't want to give up this drug. Because they said, they had a higher libido. Hummer said, that therefore this could only mean that Viagra functions similarly to testosterone. If I pump a softie full of testosterone, I blow up his conflict. He'll go into resolution of his territorial loss conflict. Which is why the angina pectoris goes away. And the libido is back again. But then, what happens in the crisis? There inevitably comes the notorious heart attack. And that is what Viagra is known for. So Big Pharma said, oh, just a moment please. We just put the wrong label on it. We can't sell it as a heart medication, we have to sell it as a sexual enhancer. The main thing is that the cash register is right. If there is one or the other put into diapers due to heart attacks, then this is a clear case of karma. That's clearly a guilty self-inflicted consequence. If a man's mother is programmed into the DHS of his first territorial conflict, he is gay. But fixated on his mother. That is the Oedipal. Here too, I have an example from a study circle. A 50-year-old came, and his wife was 67. And that's all the information you need. You know he must be Oedipal. If the wife is older by 17 years, you know he must have suffered a conflict with his mother. And this conflict he told of freely, and without reservations. That was, he was just a little boy whose mother had run away. It was in the streets of Vienna, and she ran away because she wanted to kill herself. He followed her, barefoot in his pajamas. That was his conflict. The French president is Oedipal. In childhood, he must have had a rending conflict with his mother. Often these people remain bachelors. The Oedipal is the classic bachelor. This also exists with the left-handed man, with the Knight's Hop. If his mother is programmed into the DHS, then he is also Oedipal. The female counterpart of Oedipus is Electra. Dad walks through the living room with an erection. The 5-year-old girl sees that, and bang! She is dad fixated. After that, she has men 20 years older than her. I'm not saying that an older man having a woman 20 years younger is a bad thing. There are worse things. It also works this way with a left-handed woman and the night hop of the conflict to the other side of her brain. She, too, is Electra, if her dad gets programmed into the conflict. As I said, they are fixated. What daddy says is like the amen of a prayer, it's gospel truth, from the moment of the DHS onward. Now let's delve into the insider info. What happens at the brain and organ levels? During orgasm, like in other crises, often the entire territorial area reacts. So when a right-hander has her vaginal orgasm, the laryngeal relay can react as well. Larynx crisis? You can't get the air in. So she's gasping. In the left-hander's clitoral orgasm, she has a longer exhalation. She's moaning. So if the clapping test is not clear, there are other methods to find out someone's handedness. You just have to listen carefully. How does your partner breathe during this time? Or how do you breathe? Schooled medicine equals SM equals sado. Masochism. Orgasm device with a remote control. Mount a few electrodes on the spinal cord of a woman. Give the remote control to a man, and he can make the woman happy. So this is conventional medicine. I can't help it, I don't have such ideas. Please don't blame me. I don't have such ideas. I hope that has made the orgasm more or less understandable for you. Let's change the subject to primary handedness. About 60% of us are right-handers and 40% left-handers. There are many more left-handers than one suspects, because left-handers are routinely retrained. But they still all clap their left hand into their right. And although there are more right-handers than left-handers, Dr. Hummer thought that the original handedness must have been left-handedness, based on the following. Consider a valley with a more or less hermetically sealed, that is, self-contained, pack of deer. A wolf tears out the alpha deer, the top deer. Now all the does are sexually frustrated. The boss is gone. A right-hoofed doe loses ovulation, she is now masculine. The right-hoofed female with a sexual conflict, since she doesn't come into estrus, is therefore excluded for reproduction. This means that if they were all right-hoofed, the herd would become extinct. Meanwhile, the left-hoofed doe is just as sexually frustrated. But she has the night hop of the conflict to the other side of her brain. She thereby becomes over-female, she continues ovulating. She can still be mated by a softie, and thus provide for the further existence of the herd. If all were right-hoofed, the pack would die out. Additionally, unconflicted males naturally prefer feminine females. Those right-hoofed masculine females, who don't ovulate, they are not so attractive to him. But this left-hoofed one, this super feminine left-hoofed female, he finds pleasure in loving her. For this reason, the left-handed woman can resolve a sexual conflict more easily than the right-handed woman can. By being able to solve the sexual conflict through mating, the left-handed woman attracts conflict resolution to herself like a magnet. It's similar for males, who get into a territorial fight. The stronger one defeats the weaker one. And with that, the weaker one has lost his territory. If he is right-handed, his first conflict is on the right. And thus he becomes female and subordinates himself. He is gay, and fixated on the alpha. The right-handed gay man is the classic second wolf. If the left-hander loses a territorial fight, he has the night hop, and he becomes manic. But through this mania, he suddenly has new energy, and he jumps at the alpha a second time, with twice the energy of before. An energy that he didn't have before. And so he can solve this conflict more easily than the right-handed man. This is why left-handed people are the predestined alphas. Look once in the media, and pay attention to those who have made it. Whether they are politicians or footballers, singers or actors, they are often left-handed. They are the predestined alphas. Let's take an example. When a right-handed man and a left-handed man start a company together, it is only a matter of time before the right-handed man is defeated by the left-handed man. To lose, the left-handed man must be defeated twice. The first time and again a second time. He must suffer a second conflict. Otherwise, the right-hander loses the lead. The left-hander can't do anything else. He has to lead unless he is in a constellation. And we will discuss that in a moment. I once had an acquaintance who surveyed anyone he could interview, whether they were self-made and independent, whether they were man or woman, and whether they were left or right-handed. The result was quite clear. Almost 70% of left-handed people were able to get into self-employment on their own. So, as I said, these left-handed people are the predestined alphas. Now, we come to the biological sense of these territorial constellations. Take a look at the educational videos titled, Psychoses, Constellations in the Territorial Areas, Parts 1 and 2. In them, the different constellations are explained, flying constellation, postmortem constellation, and so on. Again, a constellation means a Hummer focus on the right, a Hummer focus on the left, and both active. If the two Hummer foci are in the larynx relay and the bronchi relay, then he is a flyer, he's in flying constellation. If the Hummer foci are in the two coronary heart relays, he is postmortem, he's in postmortem constellation. Rectum and stomach relays? He's the choleric, he's in aggressive constellation. Stomach and larynx, that's autistic constellation. Rectum and bronchi, that's the mythomanic. What could nature have intended with this? It only concerns the men. In nature, the women would be alpha across the board. These constellations are actually only intended for men. Because a woman, when she comes into a constellation, she's already out again at the next ovulation, simply by the mating of the alpha. In nature or in a biological society, the women would be all, or mostly all alpha women. But today, they all suffer from depression. And depression is of course a constellation, mostly. With right-handed women in any case. Women today are either manic depressive or they are fully manic. Fully oriented only on career. And, of course, developmentally stunted. So what has nature intended with this? Just because Dr. Hummer brought these examples of wolves and deer, didn't mean that he intended that we should behave like wolves and deer. He pointed these territorial ranking behaviors out to us, because that is better understood and therefore easier to convey to us humans, than the schooling behavior of fish. Or the monogamous pair bonding behavior of ducks. Hummer also meant that monogamy does not correspond to our biology. Hummer meant us to understand rather, that what would correspond to our biology, is the clan. The alpha, and a lot of second wolves. Somebody still has to do the work. Which, of course, will be a lot of the women and the second wolves, who are all gay anyway. If a woman ovulates, the alpha is ready. A woman then ovulates only every 3 to 4 years. The rest of the time, she is hormonally male. She carries her child, breastfeeds it, and is hormonally male the entire time. Therefore, her libido is in the cellar anyway. Every 3 to 4 years, she becomes hormonally female again. Her estrogen increases, she ovulates, and then the alpha is ready. Once the alpha is no longer there, if he is missing, the next one in rank becomes the alpha. So it doesn't get that monotonous for women. Every 20 to 30 years, there will be a change, a new alpha. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't see it the same way as Hummer. How many discussions I've already had with my wife about this. The alpha, as I said, has full emotional maturity, which we don't attain until we're 25. Then one is mature, and the alpha has the necessary long-term perspective to make the right decisions. An emotional 5-year-old, someone who got in a constellation at the age of 5 and got stuck there, should not be in charge of a company. He does not have the necessary perspective. He makes nonsense. But the alpha, he's in demand. We look for him, we ask him for his advice. And we recognize the alpha man by the fact that he either has his territory or he's in the process of building up a territory. This is usually a solid male, but not a macho. Of course, he has territorial behavior. But really he's balanced, you know who you're dealing with. You can wake him up at 4 a.m. and you know where you stand. Meanwhile the constellated one, you can't get the measure of him. Should there ever be any doubt about whom the boss is, though, the alpha can pound his fist on the table and ensure clarity. He can do that, and do it plenty. This is also true among women. The alpha woman, in every women's circle. It soon crystallizes who the boss is. Non-verbally. Unfortunately, only 1 in 100 is alpha. Conflicts and are basically gay, that is cerebrally castrated. So, when it comes to saying what is normal, then you'd have to say, normal is being gay. It's not normal to be alpha if only 1 in 100 is alpha. Let's take a pack of wolves, as an example. We have alpha wolf and young alpha wolves. A young wolf is a sort of mini alpha. In nature, every mother protects her child from conflicts. She always keeps an eye on her child. If danger threatens, the mother is there to protect the child from conflicts. Every mother, no matter what species, instinctively tries to raise an alpha. Only we humans have been trained away from these instincts. We hand over our lifeblood to a nursery where pedophiles then abuse our children. So terrible. And this is even made compulsory by law. So crazy. Because the pedophiles are in government and in the churches. Really terrible. We have a badly broken society. As I said, the more you understand Germanische Heilkunde, the more you can't help but howl about our society. So the young min alpha wolf enjoys puppy protection. A puppy is even allowed to bite the alpha's leg. The alpha's bite is inhibited because you don't beat up on a child. Such a young pup is a mini quasi-alpha. By the way, in the past, the firstborn took over the family business. Why? The firstborn had the full attention of the mother. The secondborn never had this because there is an older sibling. And the mother can't watch over them so well that the older one doesn't cerebrally impede the younger one. And in the past, the firstborn took over the family business because they were usually an alpha. With his skills at the helm, the company was more apt to flourish. The younger brother often joined the military or became a priest. Or he just became an employee in his brother's company. The younger brother was not allowed to marry either. This is how it was regulated in the past. And why was it like that? It all came from practical experience. And now look at the milksops who govern us. Developmentally stunted intellectuals, who simply take their orders from above. And those up there, the ones who give the commands, we don't know them at all. We only know the chess pieces in the front row, the ones who are the puppets. And if this young male wolf comes into sexual maturity and is interested in a female, at the very least, the alpha must intervene because reproduction is his job. What will he do? He will attack the young male in a highly acute and isolative way, and he will make sure that the mother is not present. And unexpectedly for the lad, catch him on the wrong foot and bite him down. He must attack him. At this point, there are several possibilities. One is that the junior is stronger than the older alpha. This will result in a changing of the guard. The young male will now take over the pack, and the ex-alpha will become the pack's foot scraper. After that, all bites go on him. With wolves, it is so. The second possibility is that the junior is defeated. He leaves the pack, and builds up a new pack. He resolves his conflict in due time, survives the heart attack, and is chief of the new pack. The third possibility is that he submits and resigns and comes to terms with it. With us humans, this program is set for a 6-month limit. For up to 6 months I can fight, and if I don't make it, then I resign. Through this resignation, I can transform the conflict down and live to a very old age, but in this case, I am not allowed to solve it. Instinctively, we won't solve such conflicts anymore either. The right male side territorial area of the brain closes itself. So as long as a man fights, he is a man. When he doesn't fight anymore, when he resigns, then he is cerebrally castrated and is now a second wolf. We see this with dogs as well. The second wolf, or dog, does not hold his tail upward, it hangs below. He no longer lifts his leg when he pees, he squats down like a female. And he's gay, fixated on the alpha. Yes, what the alpha says is like the amen in prayer. His libido is in the basement, and he's no longer interested in females. That's nature's way. He loves the one who bit him down, is gay for him. I really think that's nice of nature. When a left-pawed wolf comes into sexual maturity, the alpha will confront him in the same way. There are again different possibilities. 1. He is stronger than the alpha. The second possibility is, he succumbs to the alpha, becomes manic, and thereby defeats the alpha in the second run. And the third possibility is, he succumbs, jumps the alpha a second time, and succumbs a second time. So let's say I'm an alpha and in the prime of life, and a young offspring male such as this comes along and would like to dispute my position. So I give him a good lesson. If he is right-pawed, he subordinates himself to me with the one defeat, and he loves me. He becomes gay for me. But if he's a lefty pod, he jumps on me a second time. Then he gets a second beating. Whack. And now, he is in the constellation. Nature says, "Dear boy, you have already failed to deal with one conflict, you can't solve two. I'm taking you out of the race. You no longer need to take part in the hard fight for the top. You will enjoy the puppy protection again from now on. You are crazy, manic depressive. From now on, you are the buffoon of the pack. Consciously see this for yourself." Observe a pack of small boys on a children's playground. There is a leader, then there are those who subordinate themselves to the leader. And then there is the clown of the group, whom everyone beats up. This is the class clown now. You don't have to take part anymore, you run along out of competition. You only get a job in the pack, adequate to your maturity level. For example, a kindergarten teacher. If he got stuck very early, emotionally, he is a child, and he remains a child. Therefore, he gets along well with children. He himself is also a child. Nothing happens to you. Stop the conflict loading, stop cancer. The pack is taking care of you. Stop the conflict loading, stop cancer. Take it down. Wait for better times. You yourself can't resolve the situation at all. You have to wait until the situation resolves in your favor, and only then can you throw off the constellation. What does that mean? Well, he's constellated now. He's the clown in the pack, the buffoon. He's no longer taken seriously. Everybody kind of hits him, bites him away. And he's waiting for better times. But now, when a bear threatens the pack, the right pod cerebrally castrated second wolf, feminine as he is, says, "Oops, a bear. That's chief stuff." Of course, that's chief stuff. The alpha has to face the bear. But the alpha knows. When I'm on the bear, the right pod second wolf will jump after me. He stands by me. He goes with me through thick and thin. He loves me, and I can rely on him. But I can't rely on the manic depressive left paw. Today he is depressed and feminine, tomorrow he is manic and masculine. Today, he says yes to one, and tomorrow he says no to the same. You can't judge him for this. He just can't be relied upon. And should the alpha die now? Well, that's what it's all about. Should the alpha die, should the boss in the company die, this position must be filled. Again, there are several possibilities. Perhaps the female alpha takes over the pack, and she then selects her next alpha. So, an alpha human can get a constellated out of the constellation. The constellated can't help the constellated. But the alpha male can make a constellated female an alpha female. And the alpha woman can make a constellated man an alpha man. The alpha can do that. Another possibility is, that if she is not available, a non-cerebrally castrated young wolf will take over the pack. If this is also not available, the right power will take over. But he is already long over the limit. With us men, it's 9 months. After 9 months, if I solve this conflict, I don't survive the heart attack. He instinctively doesn't solve the conflict. He says, "Oh, alpha, no thanks. The responsibility, I'll go for the weekend on Friday." The real boss sits in the company on Saturday and Sunday, and has also invested his private assets there. But this right-hander with a conflict longer than 9 months? Not me. I don't want to be self-employed. He does not want to be independent. Now, if the whole pack comes to the clown and asks, "Hey clown, don't you want to be our boss?" Remember, in the clown, in the constellated, both conflicts were inflicted by the alpha. Now that the chief is dead, the clown of the pack says, "The chief is dead. Long live the new chief." He can thereby solve the constellation. When he had the second conflict, he went into the constellation and that stopped the conflict loading. Thus, he will survive the crisis of the first territorial conflict. In some circumstances, he can still catch up his maturity too. We humans can still catch up our maturity up to age 25. So, it's possible that he can become a quite passable alpha. The supersense of all these territorial area constellations is only for the man. The woman is naturally alpha. The supersense of these constellations is for the man to function as a quasi-spare wheel of the pack, like a fifth wheel on a carriage. Should all ropes break, the constellated can lead the pack. Take over and lead. That is what Hummer meant by the supersense of a territorial constellation. There are no patent solutions in and of themselves. Think of liver cancer, for example. Liver cancer is always starvation, always. But there are hundreds of different causes of starvation. This one has a starvation conflict because he has colon cancer. He is worried that no more food will get through. The other one has a starvation conflict because he went bankrupt. I don't know how to feed myself anymore. Yet another has a starvation conflict about his daughter, who married a deadbeat. Because he is afraid the deadbeat can't feed my daughter. In all three cases it's liver cancer, but there's no patent solution. In the first case, he would need the colon cancer gone. In the second case, he would need money. In the third case, he would need a potent son-in-law. But for the constellated child, the patent solution would be a bed-hugging, cuddle-proof boxer puppy. A dog that the child can take to bed and cuddle. It has to be a character dog. It doesn't work with sausage dog or Spitz or poodle. It has to be a proper, loyal dog. Like a Rottweiler or a boxer. Yes, this is my protector. This is my buddy. And the child tells the dog everything that he would never tell his parents. He can have a good cry, and a new life begins for the child. But make sure, it has to be his dog. This boy was autistic, and he got a Labrador. In 1 year, he made up for 3 years of development. The mother could hardly believe it. Sure, he still needs encouragement, but he's actually a healthy child. And a child manages to make up for 3 years of maturation in 1 year. Just as a pregnant woman manages to make up for 3 years of maturation through pregnancy. He can make up 3 years of maturation in 1 year. Even though, before he stood childlike, wondering at the world. And for the constellated woman, a patent solution would be a baby from the alpha. As Hummer said, that one night of love would be enough. I was once present at the following conversation. A 30-year-old woman had a figure like a comet, like a swimmer with straight, broad shoulders. Her first conflict was, when she was 8 years old. When her uncle gave her candy to make her take off her clothes. When she was 12, her brother, her only beloved brother, got her out of the situation with her uncle. But only to let her undress herself for him. With that she lost her brother, so to speak, which was the second conflict. She wasn't manually abused, but sort of visually abused. She tends to be manic, and her life partner was himself subdued when he had his vas deferens cut. Hummer said to her, "You're into softies. As a masculine woman, you go for softies. And your husband has to be a softie, because no alpha would ever let himself be subdued. Someone who allows himself to be subdued is sort of standing with a white flag and saying, 'Don't hurt me, I can't do it anyway.' So this cannot be an alpha, because it is the primary job of the alpha to take care of reproduction. Therefore, no alpha would ever allow himself to be held back." Hummer continued. "But you won't start anything at all with softies. You need an alpha male you don't like at all, because you're male yourself. Then, with the first night of love, you would realize, this man takes care of me, of my future children, of my future family. You could solve the constellation with the first night of love and thereby become an alpha woman yourself. And as an alpha woman, you'd then be attracted to the alpha man. Then you would love that man too. What does this story remind you of? It's the Frog Prince story. The princess has to kiss the ugly frog first, so that he can turn into the wonderful prince. That's how it is from her perspective. When you're in a constellation like that, you can't imagine it any other way. That's the problem. Let's admit it. In nature, she would be in the constellation at the latest only until her next ovulation. Because at the latest, then she is with the alpha. The alpha takes care that no other male comes to the shot. He'll bite every other male away. She would have no other choice but to become an alpha woman again. So for the constellated child, the patent solution would be the dog. And for the constellated woman, the patent solution would be a baby from the alpha. Of course, she can also be mated by a softie, but there nothing is solved. Now, for the constellated man, the patent solution would be a territory. For example, the clown who then takes over the company from his father. He will suddenly have his own territory. He can thus solve the constellation and become a good company boss, under the right circumstances. The point in all three types of constellated cases is, that the patent solution starts a new life. For the child, everything now revolves around his dog. For the woman, everything now revolves around her child. And for the man, everything now revolves around his territory. I recently had a conversation with a left-handed woman who was fixated on her father. Her husband was also about 17 years older. She tells me about her 30-year-old daughter. This wanted to have an operation to become a man. I talked to the mother on the phone. She was 50, and her husband was 67. When she was a child, her father had always slid a mirror under the door, so that he could watch his daughter shower. That was her conflict, Dad fixed. She lived out her sexuality in a completely exaggerated way with her husband. Mainly with older men, she is Electra. But with her first child, with her daughter, the matter was solved. After her first child she was a normal mother. Now, her question to me was, how could she help her 30-year-old daughter that now wanted to do hormone therapy? And wanted to have an operation to become a man? I said, you have to tell her your own story. With your first child, your constellation was wiped away, and you saw the world differently. Your daughter needs nothing but a child. Preferably from a real man. Not one who is gone right away, but one with whom she can start a family. Then she would get out of the constellation, and then she would not want to be operated on, to become a man. Then her femininity would come out of her innermost being again. That is the patent solution for her. But try to explain that to a 30-year-old, living in a commune where one is gay, the other is bi, and the third is completely genderless. A real gender messed up environment. All of them are highly intellectual, and spend the whole day in supervised thinking, from early in the morning until late in the evening. They're all on the self-fulfillment trip. They have been taken in by the elite all along the line. And now don't even know front from back. Just try to explain to a 30-year-old woman that this is all nonsense. That she should just have a child. In nature, she would already have 5 children. But you can't possibly explain that to her. That is precisely the problem. Explain colors to colorblind people. It's almost impossible, or at least very difficult. There are many boxer dogs running around out there on Hummer's advice. There are also many children running around out there on Hummer's advice. But I have never seen Hummer recommending a territory to a man. That never happened. Because Hummer was himself a gigantically large buck, a top dog, who tolerated nobody encroaching his territory. Not one man in the proximity of Hummer had an easy life. You were constantly bitten. That was Gerd. Hummer was a real alpha. By the way, Dr. Hummer had severe bronchitis again and again. That was his weakness, that was his fear. He'd have the Hummer focus active, and then it would be resolved again. Then bronchitis followed, and then he was well again because the conflict became active again. But what does this mean? Could he have had a conflict on the left hemisphere? Yes, or no? No, he could not have had a conflict on the left. Because if he did, he could not have solved the first conflict. But because he had solved the territorial fear with the bronchi again and again, active and solved again repeatedly, it means that he could not have had a conflict on the left. Whenever he had bronchitis, he was entirely without conflicts. At those times, he was alpha. So, Hummer's nature was that of a giant and a genius. And now, unfortunately, he has died. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am through with the material for this educational tutorial. And, again, I hope it was interesting for you. Don't expect to be able to recite it all right away. Let me put it this way, if you could grasp all this right now, I would find another vocation. I would learn something else. It took me years to understand this by half. But I can only give you the recipe. How the soup should taste is even more challenging to convey. Therefore, always remember to stick to the original literature. The source, which is Hummer's books. There you can learn and understand everything most precisely. Thank you very much for your interest. It would be a pleasure for me to welcome you again, and until then, I wish you a pleasant time. Helmut Pilhar.